Thank you.
Shares of UPS are down this morning. The company with an earnings beat taking a hit, though, for under forecasting holiday delivery expectations. A short time ago, in response to tax reform, company says it's boosting investments by $12 billion, including buying 14 new planes. Joining us first on CNBC, UPS CFO Richard Peretz, a member of the CNBC CFO Council. Richard, it's always good to check in with you. Good morning.
Good morning.
To you, what's the more important dynamic this morning for investors, the delivery reflection or the guidance on CapEx today?
Well, I think overall it's both the guidance on CapEx and where we're growing the company. We're a $66 billion company that grew last quarter by 11%. So we know the demand and the opportunity is there. A few years ago, we decided to invest in the international, and we're seeing the results today. And we're in the middle of investing in the U.S. domestic operations in a way that we haven't historically. And we're going to see the results and leverage created out of those investments. So with this tax reform, it gives us a tremendous opportunity to continue to invest and take advantage of the 100% deductibility at the same time.
Give us a sense of how CapEx will be different, how it looks different than it did a few years ago. And do you feel that with the booming environment and e-com that you waited too long to bring numbers up?
Well, I think the first thing you have to look at is if you look at the planes or aircraft. We announced another 14 747-8s and 4 767s this morning. Go back since 2013, we've seen volume growth in the air products, double digit in the international, almost 15% export growth this year, and over 5% or around 5% next day air. Those are some numbers that we haven't seen really in the last decade. And so at the end of the day, it's about the economic engine that is really synchronized across the world. And so we're taking advantage of that and investing there. And then inside the small package environment, it really is about technology and capacity. And again, we're a company that has historically moved around GDP, and we're starting to grow much faster than GDP, really because of both e-commerce and just generally the global trade growth rates are just so high. It's a unique opportunity for UPS, and we're going to jump in and take advantage of that.
Richard, you incurred $125 million in additional operating costs during this peak period when you delivered 762 million packages, which is quite a number of packages. How difficult is it to really get a handle on what the traffic will be? This sounds like it was hard to anticipate that you'd have such a peak season.
Well, so I first think that we look at the National Federation of Retailers, and we say their forecast was somewhere between 3%, 6%, and 4%. It was 45% higher at 5.5. The hardest area to really manage for is the millions of small customers, because for the large customers, we have both the control tower and the forecast that we work with them on a day-to-day basis. But at the end of the day, this peak season, what we saw was during Cyber period, we saw a 20% lift. And it wasn't just all the big retailers or the big e-commerce customers that we have, but it was every customer in every segment. In fact, this year, 90% of the days between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we were over 30 million packages. Go back 2 years ago, we had 20% of the days that we were over 30 million. So there's a tremendous opportunity in our industry. It's growing faster than GDP. And so we are investing to make sure that we not only have the capacity for this period, but for the entire year.
Within these small customers that accounted for such a huge surge, Richard, does that include the sort of third-party sellers that Amazon has who may ship directly to customers?
Yeah, when you take the whole broad perspective of all of our customers, most of our small and medium-sized customers are still independents who work directly with UPS. There is a segment of our customers that are part of the Amazon family and do ship directly from their locations. But most of them, the volume surge that we saw was across the segment where it was also all the independent little shops that were also participating as well.
30,000 feet, Richard, in terms of macro, we got some PMI numbers out of Europe, which, I mean, Germany above 60, Greece 55. I just wonder, can you characterize growth in Europe and to some degree Asia versus what we're seeing here in the U.S.?
Sure. So in Europe, we actually talked about our cross-border movements staying on continent, and we saw another 20% growth in volume crossing borders on Europe. And so we continue to see all 4 quarters this year really solid, good growth. Part of that is that we've got a product in the market that's a little different than most others. It is an integrated network similar to what we're used to having here in the US. And then on the Asia side, we continue to see great export both to Europe and to, from Asia and from Asia to the US. Those 3 747-8s we took delivery on in the 4th quarter of 2017 were all for Europe-based volume. And they were full almost the day we put them in. So again, a continued success, and that's why we saw the earnings of the international actually hit a record. And currency adjusted, we're talking about a 19% improvement in revenue, profit.
You know, Richard, recently the president commented in the context of commenting about the Postal Service, the U.S. Postal Service, and how they continue to lose money, that USPS should actually charge players like Amazon more money. When the president gets into saying that a competitor of yours should charge more money, how do you think about that? Does that is that good for you? Do you just wish the president would stay out of commenting about pricing when it comes to shipping?
Well, let me just start by saying the post office is both a competitor, a vendor, and a customer of UPS's. And obviously, because the value proposition that they bring to the market has different features of service, their rates are different than ours. As they bring their rates up, that does help the pricing environment in the industry. So if we do see improvements in their pricing, we think that's a tailwind or a benefit to UPS as well.
So the president's comments could actually be helpful to you?
Well, you know, obviously what ends up happening, because the postal pricing is done through a regulatory process, I'll just have to wait and see.
Richard, really good insight. Appreciate your time as always. See you next time.
Thank you.
Richard Peretz, the CFO of UPS. When we come back, we're going to hear from the CEO.